Does the Fed affect only sentiment of the bond market? Well, not the short end of the curve. They're going to impact that. But who knows, right? I mean, it just goes back to the price signal. I mean, the Fed is distorting the front end. So to think that that has absolutely no impact on the long end, I think that's foolish. So I don't, obviously it doesn't have as much of an impact. That's more of a market driven with the 10-year and the 30-year, but it's not doing nothing. That's for sure. But I think maybe a better way to answer that question is, does the Fed affect only? I think that's what they affect most, other than the front end of the curve. And honestly, I think it was a result of the bailouts. This is another thought experiment that I've done, and I'd encourage all of you to go through. Let's assume for a moment that the Fed or the central planners didn't bail out long-term capital management, late 90s. And let's also assume they didn't bail out any of the banks during the GFC. They just let them go bust. But then let's also assume that they did QE. Would the stock market have gone up to the degree it did? Would we have had the everything bubble if we would have had an environment of QE but no bailouts? And I think the answer is no. I don't think that QE is what, I mean, I'm not saying it's good, but it doesn't have the biggest impact. I think what has the biggest impact is the market believing that the Fed is always going to bail you out. It's always going to bail out the system. It's going to do whatever it takes. And that in and of itself, I think, creates this mentality of risk on. And then when you combine that with the super, super low interest rates and pushing people further and further out the yield curve, I think that's what is the major driver of the everything bubble that we have. So it's not so much, so just to reiterate here, it's not so much QE, but I think it's much more so the bailouts and artificially low rates. And you know what? On that, I want to be fair, because I don't know that the rates are always artificially low. I think that sometimes they could be artificially high, but whatever they are, they're artificial. And that's my point, or my earlier point, is you got to let the market discover those prices. You got to let the market set the price of money.